What's up, y'all? Welcome back. This one's going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a bit more of a chatty one because today I'm going to be talking about a song and a band that has had a lot of influence on heavy music in general, as well as the music that I make. You'll see what I mean as I go on, so honestly, I'm just going to dive into it. So there are a few times in music history where a song is credited with starting a new genre or a movement. Black Sabbath birthed heavy metal, Smells Like Teen Spirit brought grunge into the mainstream, but there's another example that I'm going to talk about today, and that is Korn's debut single, Blind. This song is widely credited with spearheading nu metal, a subgenre of metal that absolutely took over the 90s and the 2000s. And in this video, I plan to find out why. What was it about this song that stood out so far from its neighbors in the metal scene at the time? To answer this question, there's no better place to look than Korn's performance of Blind at Woodstock 99. So the song itself opens with a constant 16th note pulse on the ride cymbal, peppered with a distorted dissonant chord played on one of the guitars. The bass plays a short line before dropping out again. And then the other guitarist enters with a shortened version of the main riff. So throughout the intro, Korn is just building up this tension layer by layer by layer, and this tension is serving to further rile up the crowd, who was already brimming with energy at that point. Then, after a few repetitions of the main riff, the energy bursts. The crowd starts moving like literal liquid, and the band members are just jumping around on stage. They're banging their heads. They're almost folded in half. Everyone is just consumed in this raw chaos. Now, from the first few seconds, it became obvious that Korn's sound was different from the groove-based bands that came before them, like Pantera or Faith No More.
You know, when you talk to people about what makes new metal different from old metal, if you want to call it that, it maintains a sense of heaviness, whatever that means, whether that's sonically or lyrically or whatever, but also pulled from hip-hop sounds. And so that groove that you're talking about is actually like kind of being borrowed from what was happening with like underground hip hop or like gangster rap around the same time.
So the verse of the song is a little bit more subdued, with less distorted, kind of sustained chords on the guitars, and Jonathan Davis singing in this kind of low, creaky voice. Davis's vocal performance is all over the place in terms of intensity. Throughout the song, he sounds like he goes from whispering in the listener's ear to screaming in their face. So the interlude of the song mirrors the intro, with everything dropping out except for the ride cymbal and the guitar, and Jonathan Davis repeating the line. And Davis repeats this line while the instruments kind of build the intensity back up behind him until... So Korn, with their combination of metal with elements of funk and hip-hop, presented this sound that quickly became insanely popular with young people from a wide variety of musical backgrounds. I mean, looking at the enormous crowd at Woodstock, most of the people there don't really look like metalheads.
Nu metal was an interesting thing because there was kind of a little bit of something for everyone. You have everything from bands like Korn to heavy bands like Coal Chamber, but then you have bands like Linkin Park, bands like Evanescence. I mean, still heavy, but like on a different side of the darkness spectrum, and everything in between. You know, System of a Down, Rage Against the Machine, like all that stuff. It's appealing to a much wider audience. You're gonna have some kids who they're listening to Top 40 at the time, which or TRL, that are just aware of these bands because they're on those lists. So maybe you get a bit of the preppier side there. And then you have some who are like steeped in the metal realm.
It's also worth mentioning that MTV played a huge role in the dissemination of this style. The combination of the sound and the visuals allowed the music to become synonymous with the aesthetics of these nu metal bands. And this is what led to bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit fusing not only the sounds of these different subcultures, but the fashion styles as well.
The image is super important because you have this departure from what was going on with like hair metal, the leather, the spandex, the bright colors, the permed hair, like all of that. This was like a more of a move or push towards like youth subculture. So that was like a fusion of like hip hop styling in the imagery, skate, or 90s skater style, and still like some of the metal looks. So the way in which like Monkey and Head would wear their hair, or like seeing tattoos or piercings and things like that, which would have been really taboo in the 90s. So they kind of fit the image side of that as well.
And lyrically, Korn was also doing something different from the bands that came before them. There was this definite thematic shift away from what older metal bands were talking about.
There's something about new metal bands that old metal bands didn't quite cover, and I think a lot of that was this sort of frustration or this like human condition, especially in regards to things that could be more centered around like personal mental health versus just like scary, you know, or like the occult. But this is something Korn did very well, would speak a lot on issues of abuse, issues of neglect, like these very personal things that are scary in their own way, but still were not part of sort of like normal societal conversation.
And this lyrical shift towards more personal matters like abuse, trauma, or mental health allowed listeners who were dealing with similar issues to hear a name given to what they were going through. And that, combined with the heaviness of the music, gave people an avenue through which to vent their angst. Korn, above all else, appealed to the disaffected, the ignored, and the forgotten. I mean, one of their albums is literally called The Untouchables. And this has allowed their music to have a large appeal to this day. According to Google, interest in nu metal is the highest it's been since 2004. Korn combined multiple sounds and aesthetics that appealed to a wide variety of disaffected people and encouraged them to come together to trade music, fashion, and ideas. And this combining of subcultures has allowed Korn to enjoy a decades-long music career and attract millions of loyal fans of all ages. And that's all I got. Thanks for listening to my little rant about a band that has had a huge impact on myself and my own music. And I know they appeal to a lot of other people, so if you're one of those people, feel free to sound off in the comments. When did you first hear Korn? What impact have they had on your life? And if you've never listened to Korn before, what are you doing? Listen to them. Anyways, I appreciate y'all for sticking with me to the end of this one. I know it was a little bit different, but if you like what you saw here, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and y'all take care of yourselves. I'll see you around.